China. Everyone knows China, right? Most populated country on earth, one of the largest countries in Asia. Everyone loves China. And if you know anything about China, you know they're pretty authoritarian as far as modern countries go. And this authoritarianism leaks into pretty much every aspect of Chinese life, including the internet, which is what I want to talk about today. Now, China has been trying to censor the internet pretty much since the internet was a thing. In the early 90s, when it really got popular in China, they started building what is now today known as the Great Firewall of China, obviously being named after the actual Great Wall of China. Now, the Great Firewall of China was about as good as keeping Chinese people on the internet as the actual Great Wall of China was at keeping the Mongols out, and that it completely fucking failed in every aspect. Basically, anyone with a modicum of computer knowledge could get over the firewall within a few minutes. It was basically the equivalent of like a high school firewall on your fucking high school computer, right? It just didn't work. Now, the early failures of the firewall really made it a laughingstock for Western countries, which led President Bill Clinton to say this on live TV.
Now, there's no question China has been trying to crack down on the internet. Good luck. That's sort of like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall.
Yeah, that one aged pretty bad, but not as bad as this other thing he said.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Clinton slander aside, it actually kind of makes sense why he said this. At the time, the firewall was a complete joke, and it just didn't work in any aspect. Along with this, China wasn't nearly as rich as they are today, so it didn't seem like they were going to put much resources towards it. As well as this, the internet also was designed to survive a nuclear attack, so it didn't make a lot of sense that a single country would be able to censor it for so many people, right? The whole idea is it can survive a nuclear blast. How is China going to censor it? China is a big boy country now, and they have the resources to put towards the firewall, and by God have they done so. It is basically impenetrable now. I mean, people can still get through it, right? People have been able to get through it with VPNs and proxies, but it's not consistent, which is the very scary part about it. Now, there's kind of a misconception about the Chinese internet from the West. The whole idea is that, well, one day it was free and now it's censored, but that's not really true. In the early 2000s and the early 2010s, the internet was still pretty free in China. What happened is that a lot of Chinese companies started building Twitter clones, but the Chinese government wasn't concerned. A lot of China's population at the time, and still to this day, was agrarian, and they didn't have the technology that would allow them to access these. The unfortunate thing is that the people who wanted to speak out against the government the most were rich people who did have access to this technology, and they started posting their opinions a little bit too much on these Twitter clones. Now, this really came to a head in 2011 with the Wenzhou train collision. Now, what happened is two trains collided at each other at high speeds, and that killed about 50 people. The problem with this was that China was trying to bury this in the news because the train model was supposed to be really good, and obviously it's shit if they crashed into each other. Now, China also started burying the actual dead bodies and the train cars off the side of the railroad. Now, a few brave people went to the site and recorded video evidence of them doing this and then posted it to these Twitter clones. Now, this situation really forced the Chinese government to play their hand, and they started banning a lot of these Twitter clones. Now, a few of them still exist today, but they're mostly owned by Tencent, and that is the reason why this video has taken so long to produce, because Tencent is an insanely complicated company. It has taken me a better part of a week to learn how they even work as a company and what they own, because that is a huge part of it too. Now, Tencent is basically the Google of China, okay? That's the best way to describe them without getting too technical about it, but they completely changed the game when it comes to internet censorship, especially in China. Now, they own a shit ton of apps, companies, movies, game developing studios. They own pretty much everything. Name an industry, they have some part in it. But the main thing they own when talking about China is WeChat. Imagine opening your phone and only having one app on it, okay? The Notes app, Spotify, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the concept of email, DoorDash, PayPal, and the weather app all in one app. That's basically what WeChat is. Because it's every app combined, this is pretty much the only app that the average Chinese person uses, and this is perfect for monitoring what they are saying and what they're trying to look up. If they see anything about that incident in 1989, you can just ban them off WeChat and they won't find anything about it. It is basically the perfect tool to figure out what your citizens are talking about. Now, another thing that Westerners really get wrong about China is they think it's the 1984 government. It's not really like that. China is not stupid, and they know that putting that much resources towards trying to censor somebody is just not worth it. They only want to control a majority of what people see and think about. They don't want to control all of it. This is why you can still buy movies that theoretically should be banned in China, right? You can buy the 1984 movie, it's just on the 14th page of Amazon. This does two things. It, one, discourages people who aren't that interested in looking it it up. If your friend says, hey, you should watch this movie 1984, it like goes against the government and they can't find it, they'll just give up and not care. And meanwhile, it makes people who are really dedicated to it, let's say that friend that recommended it to you, he really wants to watch it and see what it's about, well, he can find it and think, well, actually, it's different. The Chinese government isn't like the one in 1984. This attitude when it comes to censorship and Tencent is what has been able to allow the Chinese government to basically control every single thing that Chinese citizens think about. If they don't want it, just don't allow it on WeChat. Tencent will bow to the CCP every time because that's where they get most of their funding and where they get most of their power, right? The Tencent is pretty much the third or fourth most powerful company in the world, but they're only allowed to be that because the CCP sees them as useful. So Tencent has an incentive to listen to the Chinese government when it comes to about everything. The problem is that recently China has figured out that not everyone lives in China, and they want to try and censor what everyone sees, but that's just not a possibility when you don't have direct control over every citizen. And most people in the West don't know about WeChat, so that also goes out the window. So they have devised three main ways of trying to censor the internet that's not only in China. The first and most obvious way is to export WeChat to other countries. This can mainly be seen in other Asian countries that are close to China, like Burma. Now, in Burma, WeChat is actually fairly popular. The problem with Burma is that it's really unstable and not like a great place to censor things, if we're being honest. I mean, you can't go 3 minutes outside without accidentally recording a coup happening, so it's not the greatest contender for where you set up your new censorship ring. The second and a little less obvious way of spreading their message is through just straight up propaganda. China has invested billions of dollars into spreading pro-communist propaganda across the globe. This has mainly come down to two things that I can find. One is Twitter trolls and Twitter bot accounts that will spam pro-CCP messaging in pretty much every single comment section, but the problem with these is that if you see them, it's obvious they're like a troll or a bot account or they're being paid off, so it doesn't really work for spreading the actual message. It just gets the idea of China in someone's head. The second and way more funnier way that they've done this is through rap songs about the CCP's economic growth. And no, I'm not joking, that's a real thing.
Yes, go. People coming to Beijing. This is guy looks gloomy. Get back from breathing in.
Me and the homies are going to be bumping that all night long, bro. Now, while the actual CCP's attempt at exporting their communist propaganda across the globe has, just eaten shit and died. It's completely failed in every aspect, like the beginning of the firewall. They have figured out, once again, they've evolved, and they figured out better ways to do it, which is having Tencent just do it for them. Like I hinted at earlier in the video, Tencent is one of the most powerful companies on Earth, and the reason why is because they own a stake in almost every other company. This can be seen in specifically the Blizzard instance when they banned Blitzchung, a professional esports player, for saying pro-Hong Kong stuff. I think he said free Hong Kong. This can be also seen in the NBA, where Tencent has been able to use their stake in the NBA to censor certain players' opinions on how China actually is and replace them with some more friendly opinions. It can also be seen in Disney movies. You know how they always have that shoehorned in gay scene in every Disney movie? That's actually because of Tencent. Tencent knows that it will appeal to Western audiences, and they can easily cut that scene out once it gets exported to East of Belarus. Now, this is where the original point of this entire video comes into play, Opera GX. Now, before we start talking about them, Tencent does not own Opera GX, okay? It's not a direct link, so just before anyone comments that, I know, okay? Now, if you don't know what Opera GX is, it's basically just a browser like Chrome, except for the fact that they advertise themselves in a very specific way. They say they're the browser for gamers. I could not think of a worse slogan if I'm being honest, but apparently it's worked because they are one of the most popular browsers in America. Opera, especially in their advertisements, but just as a company as a whole, is really weird. They do a lot of commercials with Charlie, aka Critical. I like Charlie, okay, I think he's a nice guy. He seems like a nice guy, but I would probably not trust him with sponsorships going forward, but that's just me. They're very clearly trying to get at this early age male demographic, and I mean clearly it's working, right? They are one of the most used browsers in America. Another way that I guess I would say this unorthodox approach to marketing comes into play is Opera GX's Twitter account. Now, if you were to compare my Twitter account to, let's say, Burger King's Twitter account, it'd be pretty clear that there's a big difference, right? The Burger King account feels like there's fucking 50 people over it, and that's because there pretty much is. There's a whole team of social media influencers working on the Burger King account. Meanwhile, mine, it's just me, it's just my opinions. But the Opera GX account compared to mine, they'd seem pretty similar, and that's because I think there's just one guy behind it. This has allowed Opera GX, or more specifically the guy who runs the Twitter account, to basically get in on YouTube drama, which I would say is kind of cool, right? If I was running a company, I'd probably do it the same way. And this is where the whole story starts with Leafy is here, okay? Leafy is here, Leafy's queer, old school commentary YouTuber. Probably the most popular, other than iDubbbz maybe, but recently he's been known for making these anti-trans posts on Twitter. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I think some of them are funny, okay? I still think some of them are funny. I think Leafy overall is a pretty funny guy, but it can't be denied, okay? He's going a little bit insane on the timeline, and apparently his girlfriend thought the exact same thing because she keyed his car and threw a beer bottle at his windshield and broke up with him. And as you can probably already imagine, this was the perfect time for all the Leafy haters to, dunk on him, kind of justifiably. And one of these people was the Opera GX account. They said, putting the W in a woman, and I can't even lie, right? I'm a Leafy fan. They kind of fucking owned him, okay? They kind of fucking owned him. Now, Leafy, he's a true soldier, okay? He just soldiered through the hate. He came out unscathed, and he responded, calling them Chinese spyware. Now, if you know anything about the internet, the whole meme is that every kind of shady company, it's Chinese spyware, okay? It's a virus. It's a Russian virus. Obviously, this is a joke. It's nothing to take seriously, right? There's no way in hell that Opera GX is actually Chinese spyware. I mean, they're owned by a Norwegian company, right? There's absolutely no way that they're actually Chinese spyware. Guys, they might be Chinese spyware. Now, everything I say going forward is just an allegation, okay? There's no confirmation that Opera GX is in the pocket of the CCP. Personally, I believe they are, but that's just me, right? Come to your own conclusion. I am super interested what your guys' opinions are, so, leave them in the comments if you have anything on them, right? If you know anything about Opera, if you can prove me wrong, I would love to see it, so put it in the comments. Okay. I know that's a big accusation to make, so why are they actually Chinese spyware? Well, I came with some evidence here. Firstly, the former U.S. Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, said that every company that is in China, every tech company, is in some ways complicit with CCP activity. Now, this is a broad statement. This could mean pretty much two things. Either one, they just occasionally ban things that go against what China does. This is what Google does, right? You can't look up Tiananmen Square on Chinese Google, but you can look it up on American Google. So Google, it's kind of debatable if they're bad by doing that. But it could mean that they're giving full access to all the data they collect to the CCP. It's a huge range of things this could mean, so this itself isn't what's bad. But wait, Kaiser, earlier in this video, literally a minute ago, you said that they're based in Norway, so this doesn't apply, okay? It's all good and fair. Well, there's a big issue with that. Now, this is where things get very suspicious, okay? Opera GX on multiple occasions has claimed to be owned by a Norwegian company, when in fact they are owned by Kunlun Tech, which is a Chinese company. And if we are to believe what Mike Pompeo and other US Secretaries of State have said, this would mean that they are in some ways complicit with the CCP. The fact that they are also lying about being a Norwegian company when in fact they're owned by a Chinese company is in and of itself suspicious, because why would you need to hide that unless you're going to do something suspicious based off the fact you're in China? This is not the only thing that Opera GX has kind of lied about. Now, to be fair, I'm not sure if this is real. If it's fake, please correct me in the comments. I'll pin the comment and everyone will know, okay? But there's a screenshot of Opera GX, the Twitter account, talking in a Twitter group chat where they say that they're not owned by a Chinese company, they just have a majority Chinese investor. Now, Kunlun Tech is the parent company of Opera GX, so this is just false, right? This is just false. Now, this could be explained, obviously, it might be fake. I don't think it is, but it might be. It could also be explained by the Twitter account guy who runs it is just a fucking retard and doesn't know what a parent company is. I could also expect that. But the fact they're also lying about it in this group chat, things are definitely looking pretty bad for Opera. Now, another thing that supports the idea that Opera might be Chinese spyware is the fact that many YouTubers have made varying videos on this topic before the Leafy stuff, right? So they don't have any bias. I myself am a little biased towards Leafy. I like the guy, but all these people don't have that bias, so in my opinion, they're a little bit more trustworthy. One of these videos that I found really helpful and that helped me a lot while making this video is by this guy named Cubic. He basically goes over more of the technology aspects behind Opera, and his channel will be in the description below. I'd go sub to it. I don't personally know the guy, but he seems like a cool channel. If I were you, I'd sub to it, but that's just me. Anyway, he goes over the technology behind Opera and why it might be considered spyware. Basically, he says that when you open Opera, it makes a ton of requests to track your geolocation, which wouldn't be great in the hands of the Chinese government. Going back to the actual business business side of Opera, because they are owned in China, there's been a lot of rumors that Chinese companies kind of have this thing called a CCP unit, where it would be a wing of the company focused solely on pushing what the CCP wants. Now, this could be anything from like putting propaganda into movies and video games to having like whole data collection sets. Now, personally, I think it's probably somewhere in between there, but the fact that this has been rumored and the fact that they are in China is definitely suspicious, and personally, I don't trust the company. I guess in conclusion, I would say do what you want with your own computer, right? I'm not going to stop you from downloading Opera, but wait, is Audacity glitching? What's going on?
我很喜欢冰淇淋，但是速度比较冰淇淋。朋友是一个坚韧不拔的香港。
Okay, I think I wrangled control back from those Chinese fuckers. Anyway, if you liked what you saw here, please like and subscribe. I've been the Kaiser. Peace.